What's happening, Wolfpack? It's your boy Kooks and welcome to Wolfstaar, helping you be the best you. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to listen and communicate better. Now, why would you need this type of skill in your life? Well, the truth is, oftentimes what happens is that we don't really listen to one another and we don't really communicate with one another. And you can see this happening all around you when people they argue with one another, they have misunderstandings and all the rest of it. And it really comes down to these two simple skills, listening and communicating. So let me give you an example. Let's say there's a husband and wife, they're having a chat on the phone. So I will play the husband. So talking to the wife, oh yeah, okay, yeah, and then what happened? Okay. Oh, you went shopping, right? Okay. What, you spent how much? The minute the wife says she spent a certain amount of money on a certain something, the husband all of a sudden pays attention because that particular point was really of interest to him, and it's at that point that he really starts listening. And the other example could be a couple of friends. Let's say they're teenagers and they're talking on the phone. So the first example is not necessarily listening to one another. This example is really listening to one another. So a couple of friends communicating on the phone. One friend will be like, oh, and then this happened, and then that person said this, and this person said that, and then the other friend will be like, oh, what? No way, really? Wow, go on, and then what happened? And then they'll carry on talking like this for hours and hours and on end. Now, why do you think that is? The reason is because they're really, really listening to one another, and by saying, go on, and then what? Tell me more. These types of things show that one person is really interested in what the other person is saying. So oftentimes what happens in life, these situations play out, and I'm sure you'll be able to relate, where you will say something to someone else and they won't really be listening to what you're saying, and then what you get back to you is not quite the understanding that you'd imagined. So this leads to problems and misunderstandings and miscommunications in life. So now that we've got an example of some really good communication and some not so good communication with the husband and wife example, I just want to talk you through something which I learned about a little while ago, and it's called active listening, which I thought was really, really cool. And the teenager example was probably the best example of active listening. So active listening is essentially when you're really talking with someone, really listening to someone and you're communicating with them, you intently and actively are listening to what they are saying. So you might bump into someone and you could say to them, oh, how are you, Jim? I haven't seen you in a long time. And Jim turns around and goes, yeah, I'm okay, I'm not doing too bad. Now, there's an opportunity there for you to really, really listen to what Jim was saying. That small pause, that small hesitation at the beginning was an opportunity for you to actively listen and hear out that actually there's something there that he wants to expand on. So the conversation might go something like this. So Jim, how are you? I haven't seen you in a long time. And Jim goes, yeah, I'm doing okay. You could then turn around and say, oh, you sounded a little bit hesitant there. What's going on? And Jim could go on and then expand upon what that small point and what that hesitation might be about. Now, that person may not want to talk about it more, or they might be reserved about it, or you'll find that they actually go and expand on that particular point. But really, it's the opportunity that you took and really listened to what they were saying because you were genuinely interested in that person. And what then starts to happen is a genuine conversation will start to flow. Because the more you engage and the more active you are in a conversation with someone, it starts coming back to you. And therefore, a conversation and a dialogue and a true conversation and communication starts to take place. So when you actively listen, it then leads you on to being able to actively communicate with someone and very clearly define what you're trying to say to someone and what you get back. Because sometimes what could happen is you could say to a friend, I don't know, let's meet for drinks. Now, in your mind, your assumption could be, let's meet for drinks after work because we're all going to be in this vicinity at the same time. But your friend's understanding on the other end could be that, well, that was just a generic invite to let's go and meet for some drinks at some point in the future. Now, that misalignment of clarity, that misalignment of communication and listening could lead to some kind of friction in the future. Whereas really, for you to be able to communicate more clearly, you should be asking for clarity back from whoever it is that you're communicating with. So going back to the drinks example between a couple of friends, if you were to turn around and say, look, let's go meet for some drinks, and the other person responds back and goes, yeah, let's do that. It's now your responsibility to actually reach out and seek clarity and feedback from the other person. And that could be something like, well, okay, what do you think is a good idea for us to do? Or where should we meet? And therefore it starts a dialogue between the two of you to really clarify and iron out exactly what's going to happen, and your communication becomes more and more refined. Now, when you combine the active listening with the clarity of communication and the clarity of thought, it just allows you to develop better relationships, better understanding, and essentially better communication and listening, which then leads on to better relationships and better opportunities created for yourself. So when you develop really good listening, and this is a lifelong skill, and it's really enjoyable actually when you start to do it and you actively listen to people and go, oh, go on, tell me more about that, that's really interesting. So when you actively start to listen to people, when you actively start to communicate with people in a really meaningful way, it starts to develop more and more trust with you as a person, and that's a really, really powerful position to be in. So small exercises you can do every single day is, essentially becoming more and more active in your listening. So, for example, let's say you're having a conversation. Rather than waiting for a gap in the conversation for you to put your opinion in and just to say whatever you want to say, try having a conversation with someone, let them talk, and once they've finished, really digest what they've said and ask them to expand on a point that they've talked about. Now, what that will do, that will actually show them that you've been really listening to what they're saying, and you're actually interested in what they have got to say in the first place, rather than you waiting for a gap in the conversation just to jump in and have your say and have your opinion and give your ego a stroke. It's a completely different way of operating and a completely different way of communicating with someone. So really actively listening, asking them and saying simple statements like, go on, tell me more. Oh, that's really interesting. And then little things like that will just, allow a conversation to completely unravel. Just pick someone, your mum, your dad, your dog, if your dog talks, anyone that you can have a conversation with, and just try it. Sit next to them and say, look, I want to play a little game. Get them to talk, and all you're allowed to say is those statements. Go on, and then, wow. So then what happened? And see what happens. And in the same way with communication, try to really actively communicate. So when you're speaking with someone, try and be as clear as you possibly can in what it is that you're trying to communicate. If it's instructional or if it's conversational, maybe you're talking about your feelings, try and be as clear as you possibly can be. And then also try and have an expectation of what your response would be. Because therefore it shows clarity in your own thought and your own mind, and it allows the other person an opportunity to expand on certain points that you may be wanting to talk about, but you're wanting them to actually pick out on it. Because you may not necessarily want to go into a fresh conversation and start blabbing about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Sometimes it's nice when someone's really interested in you, and they genuinely want to know more about what's going on in your life, because it makes you feel important. And ultimately, as humans, every single one of us wants to be made to feel like the most important person in the world. Hopefully I'm doing that with you through the camera, with the words that I'm speaking. Genuinely, you are so important to me because you're taking the time out of your day to watch my video and to listen to what I've got to say. And I'm really interested, genuinely, I'm really interested in what you've got to say, what your thoughts are and what your comments are. And I hope that comes across in everything that I do. So I hope you found this video helpful. It's a really, really short snapshot of how to listen better and how to communicate better, but there are some really good basics in there that you can apply and you can try, and you'll be astounded by the results if you have a go with them. Let me know what you think, and if you like what I'm doing, I'd really appreciate it if you comment, like, subscribe and share this video. Until next time, be the good wolf. And I'm going to do the happy dance.